think you talked a little bit about business investment and why we don't have that. What would be specific recommendations that the Business Council of Canada has for what specific recommendations do you have for government to stimulate business investment in Canada?
So I think if it was, it's a great question. I appreciate it. But if it was that simple, I think we would have solved that problem. So it's an ecosystem issue. Part of it is, as I said, a lack of scale from our business. Our ratio of SMEs versus large firm is very high compared to the US. In fact, the US has three times more large firms than we do. And then the composition of our economy. But I would say it's a question of the most important thing if you'd ask our CEOs would be regulatory predictability. I'm sorry. So in other words, the confidence that private actors have that the government has clear rules for investments and they will follow through and that it will be stable and sustainable going forward. I think that's the most important thing.
Well, if you have, and again, we're running out of time, but if you have any clear, if you can articulate what some of those clear rules might be that you think we should look at urgently, I'd very much appreciate to look at it. There are many.
Well, just to mention, if I may.
Sure.
I mean, Minister Freeland laid it out in her Brookings Institution's speech that she mentioned that Canada was open to fast track some energy projects under certain criteria. I think it would be very welcome if the government could follow through on that and present to investors and to the public, to Canadians, what this would entail going forward.
A few questions about the industrial policy. One of the key things we have heard very clearly from the the Business Council of Canada is your support for interprovincial trade barriers to come down into harmonized regulations and really being and fundamentally believing that would be a low cost or no cost, but a huge gain for our economic growth. Do you still believe that?
Absolutely,
do you think that should be a key priority for us?
Yes, it requires a lot of political leadership, both at the federal level and provincial level, I believe.
Okay, I just want to make sure that continued to be a priority. I call it national friendshoring, something that we should be doing nationally here.
Mr. Asselin, what is happening with government revenues right now?
Well, they are rising fast, mostly because of inflation and because of commodity prices in global markets.
Right. And so I know you've written about this previously because in last budget 22, the government was also seeing some very significant unexpected revenues then, and we're continuing to see incredibly significant unexpected revenues now. About over 5 years, you're looking at like 150 billion plus. In your recommendation, what do you think the government should spend these unexpected revenues on?
Well, I don't think they should spend it, to be honest. I think given what we have been through in the last few years, all the surpluses with these rising revenues, then they are not surpluses, but all the unexpected revenue should go towards deficit reduction. I think what is important is not just quantity of spending, but quality of spending. And on investments, on industrial strategy, there are plenty of current buckets we could reallocate more surgically, I would say, more intentionally, to have a good industrial strategy. So it's not just a matter of quantum, but I would agree with the premise that these unexpected revenues should not be spent. I would say that objectively, we're still what I would characterize as expansionary fiscal policy. Is about 140 billion more spending that we are doing at the federal level that from pre-pandemic levels. Now, not all this spending is unwarranted. I think reasonable debate can happen on each of these measures that were not COVID related. For example, I think there's a lot of merit to childcare spending. But I would agree that overall there was an overstimulation in the last few budgets.